Yeah.
I feel like my current behaviors and actions and how I spend my days is in alignment with that vision of like of intentional living. And so I think how consciously creating, um, I think for me, it's if I'm noticing that my body is starting to do the things that it used to do, like panic attacks or, migraines or just this sort of like restrictive, tense feeling all over, that is my biggest cue to me to go, okay, wait a second. Am I getting too like hustly in my business right now? Am I getting too mindset focused or something? Am I feeling like I'm saying yes to things that actually don't really want to say yes to? Am I saying no to things that actually are the things that I'd really rather be doing? So I think that somatic check-in has allowed me to um, take the pause and decide, what do I want to create space for, time for, experiences of, and what do I want to, create less of in my life.
There it is, that somatic pause. Yeah. Welcome to Connect the Dots to Your Wellbeing with Breathwork 614. I'm Tiffany Berger, the creator of Breathwork 614. I am your guide to physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. It is my passion to connect you to living a life of joy, ease, abundance, and vitality, to receiving your well-being. On today's episode, we have Katy Oberle. Katy Oberle is a Columbus, Ohio native, a licensed marriage and family therapist turned creative mindfulness coach. She's also a beautiful singer and songwriter. And I can say that firsthand. I've experienced that. Katy provides creative mindfulness programming to individuals, groups, and organizations to help them manage stress, enhance connection, and access self-compassion, gratitude, wonder, creativity, and joy. Katy is also the co-founder of the Bee Sanctuary, a new mindfulness-based wellness community in Upper Arlington. She also serves as the senior artist in residence at Ohio Health Cancer Centers in Dublin and Delaware, providing music and sound baths to patients and their families. Oh, what a beautiful bio, Katy. Welcome.
So much for having me, Tiffany.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you. So I know I just introduced yourself a little bit, but uh, what's keeping you alive right now? I mean, you have so many wonderful things going on for you and your family and those around you, those who are close in connection with you. Tell me some more. What's keeping you alive right now?
Well, I always feel more alive when I am doing musical theater. So I'm so excited that I'm rehearsing right now for Fiddler on the Roof. That's going to be a production at Gallery Players down in Bexley in Columbus, Ohio in December. So the extra joy is that my younger daughter, my 10-year-old Vera, is also in the cast with me. So it's just so much fun. So I think that whenever I am in a show, there's this community that comes together. It's this group of people who may have never, met each other before. A couple of the people I've known from previous shows, but mostly it's a conglomeration of random strangers who then become this family, and we depend on each other for, our cues and our like all of the ways that we put the show together. And it's just this beautiful community that forms and then dissipates after the end. And sometimes friendships stay after that too. So theater just makes me feel alive seeing it, but then when I can do it, it's even better.
Yes, I can see that. And you can feel that from you when you describe that. How long have you been in theater?
Pretty much all my life. Like I started, my mom put me in like a little kids performing group when I was in preschool, and like never looked back. Right. Like it's always been in my life. I've never done it completely professionally in the sense of, I kind of took the non-musical theater route career-wise. And I've had some friends that have done like the New York thing and whatever. And so I've like lived vicariously through all their amazing stories. But in one way or the other, I've always had music and performing in my life. So, growing up doing like local community theater, involved in choir, started playing guitar in middle school, and started songwriting then. And I just grew that as kind of a skill set that I'm not a great guitarist, but I know my basic chords, and you can make a lot of songs with some basic chords. And so it's just been a beautiful thing to have in my life that's always accessible in one form or another. Because again, I can pick up my guitar, I can sing with my own voice. Of course, being in a musical, that's a little bit more of a production, right? I can't always get that together, but being able to know that I can always use my own voice actually is I think kind of relates to what you do a little bit, because in terms of, breath work, like connecting to yourself, my voice and, breathing through as I'm singing also helps me feel really alive, connected to myself. It calms my nervous system and it brings me joy for sure.
Yes, yes. Thank you. You're right. The connection is there. I want to touch base on your daughter though. So your daughter's in this performance with you. How cool is that?
It is so cool. And my older daughter was just in her school play in middle school. And so we've just had a fall of doing musical things, but it's really quite a joy to be able to have, my younger one with me, and, we travel to rehearsals together, and then we're in there together. She kind of goes off with her. She has a little crew now of other little friends that are in the play with her that are, also kids in the chorus, and a couple of the kids in the little main family at Fiddler on the Roof. And so I'm like, chop liver over here. Like she could care less about me. But so it's great because she gets to have her own show experience, but like we both though kind of bond together, and she runs lines with me because I'm understudying the main female role, and so I depend on her to help me with my lines.
Yes, yeah, and what a beautiful creative outlet. I know we're going to get there about this creativity and how this can really help us enhance our well-being. But that's awesome that your family has access to that. So, woohoo! So, I was thinking as you were sharing your story, and I shared your bio, but our followers, they don't really know how we met or even how we came to be. So, I'm actually going to take a moment and pause and just share with everyone. So, Katy Oberle, I came in contact with you. So it was probably last January, probably about a year ago now,
Yeah.
and you were offering a workshop on loving kindness. And so it was you and it was Darren Larson. And why don't will you speak to that actually? Share a little bit about the theme of that and kind of what we did and whatnot?
Absolutely. Yeah, this took place at the Spiritual Life and Learning Center, which is a kind of a sub program, like organization within First Community Church in Columbus. And so they do a lot of kind of spiritual development, soulful kinds of things that aren't necessarily Christian focused, but they're just more kind of like soul focused. And yeah, I collaborated with Darren Larson, who's a local mindfulness coach. He's amazing. He has a great TED Talk. You can look him up on YouTube. But he also works with people one-on-one for mindfulness coaching and works with groups. So he's really great, and he has just such a funny, like self-deprecating sense of humor. He makes mindfulness really accessible. And he and I talked a little bit about how to make loving kindness meditation, metta meditation, feel a little bit more accessible, because some of these forms of meditation can seem a little esoteric, or they can seem a little intimidating. You want to feel like you're doing them correctly, but we really wanted to kind of shake that up and talk about how you can make mindfulness your own, your own flavor of that, whatever that means to you. And same with this kind of loving kindness meditation. And the typical loving kindness phrases are phrases that we wish ourselves well for, and we wish well others in our lives. So it could be our friends, just acquaintances. It could be people that we're kind of neutral about, people that we're maybe like really don't like. And then it could be for all beings. So we wish them well, we wish them not to suffer, we wish them health and ease. And so sometimes just going through those rote phrases though feels a little stale. So we talked about how to maybe crack open that practice and make it your own through maybe infusing creativity, creative elements into it. So for one of the things that we did in the workshop was we created kind of loving kindness collages, so that you could sort of have a little physical marker or manifestation of loving kindness and what it means to you. So you can grab images and words and colors and and pictures that that to you exude loving kindness. And it's just a way to get in your body a little bit more with it. And collage has been something that I've really, really liked using for creative self-expression purposes, but also for self-discovery, self-inquiry. And I became then recently a soul collage facilitator. So we can talk a little bit more about that later too. But I also then sang a couple songs of my own songs during the workshop around the theme of interconnection and loving kindness too. So yeah, it was a beautiful workshop. I think we had a great showing, and then Tiffany came, and so then we talked about. I mean, we quickly realized we were like kindred spirits, and we had a lot of overlaps in our Venn diagrams around our passions and our mission.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes. I loved that. Was just a wonderful opportunity for one to meet you, but then two to gain some other support and just connections within our community for people that are jiving on our same plane, right? That are in alignment. So that's beautiful. What I really loved about that workshop is, and by the way, mine's still hanging. So I hung what I created that day. It's on my bathroom mirror. And what I was picking out stuff, images that did bring out loving kindness to me, but also vibrations, felt senses of emotions and energetics that I could get a feel for. So I know I cut a pumpkin and a few gourds, and that's on there. And to me, that is grounding. Like when I feel so grounded, I'm able to love on myself and then love on those around us, right? I know I have another picture of a girl. She's in a swimming pool, a young child, and she's on a raft and just smiling at the sun. And to me, that's playfulness, right? And that's joy. And so when I see those images, I begin to feel them. I vibrate that felt sense, and we get to be, master attractors when we do that. So I loved it. It was so cool to marry what you were, teaching with what I know and see how it all comes together.
And I love that too, because you personalized it. So then you can, wish for yourself grounding and wish for others to be able to feel that same, experience of grounding, and then wish for yourself playfulness and joy, and wish that for other people. And it just means a little bit more because it's images that you've chosen, and it's words or qualities that really are important to you.
Yeah, that you can connect with. Absolutely. And so I think this is really cool for our listeners and, viewers to hear, because a lot of times when we think of mindfulness or mindfulness practices, we think I have to sit still, I have to escape my mind, I have to control my mind, and I can't do this. And then I get frustrated, and then I'm at war with myself. And that's not what it is. That's so not what it is. And there's so many different modalities that we have access to, right? To grow that mindfulness practice. So yes. So let's start actually with your past, Katy. So you mentioned you were a family and marriage therapist. Tell us a little more. What was that like for you, and what led you to changing roles?
Mhm. Yeah, I've always been fascinated with why people do the things that they do and why I do the things that I do. And I think just always searched for, I've always been like a spiritual seeker. I've always been someone that has really probably like overanalyzed everything, and just like, why do people do that? Why is life like this? What's the great, and so I think psychology was just a natural fit for me to study in college. And then looking at what I wanted to do with it, I felt like I wanted to be able to help people feel better in their lives. But then I researched different programs, and marriage and family therapy, the focus really is on systems and helping people in relationship. And that was really important to me because none of us exist in a vacuum. And definitely it's helpful when we go see, an individual therapist. But I think it probably was informed a little bit from my own growing up and kind of what I wanted to, pass down to the next generation, and the patterns that I wanted to put an end to. So I wanted to help families connect more authentically to each other, understand each other more. I wanted couples to be able to slow down and to be more intentional with each other, and to actually like parse out what is going on between us, that we're not, connecting, and that we're not feeling close, or we're having all this conflict. And And so it was, I've had a really varied career in terms of the types of venues that I've worked in, that I've been able to do the therapeutic work in, and I've taught, and I've worked with couples and families and individuals. But it got to be almost, like 18 years in the field or something. And then COVID hit. And I think I just was feeling pretty burned out. To be honest, I had, my kids were younger. My husband had and has, an intense job, also in the helping profession. And I found that I didn't have the emotional wellspring to give anymore that I wanted to. And I also wasn't accessing and utilizing my creative skills in ways that I think would really be able to nourish me and then nourish other people. I don't think I was doing a great job of listening to my own kind of like, I don't know, inner voice, because I knew that I was good at being a therapist and I was helping people, but I sort of was, I think, doing it with more of the shoulds leading the way. Like, I should do this because I have all this training and I've gotten this far and this is just what I should do. But I had the opportunity to step back in COVID and really reevaluate. And so I found that to be a time when I just went kind of into my imagination and thought like, well, what would happen if I pivoted and built a business doing things that I actually think can be really restorative and nurturing and therapeutic for people without having to actually be formal therapy? And how can I also bring my creative skill set to that, and have it be something that nourishes me and others? So from that all is where Katy Oberle Creative was born.
Wow. Oh, the blessing. That's a miracle. Look at that. Like, the miracle that you received, the gift of time, right? You acknowledge the gift of time, pause, and thought, there's something else. Like, what is this else? You took the opportunity to explore that, and then, Katy Oberle Creative. And so you have your skill set still online, very much online, but also now you get to shine from this creative space and speak to others and really show them and guide them. And mindfulness isn't just sitting all quiet, trying to get out of your mind.
That's
There's
right.
so many modalities and access.
Absolutely. And I delved into a lot of mindfulness practice when I was trying to I think prevent myself from drowning in that whole experience when I was feeling burnt out. I really tried to, okay, before I decided to finally, leave my profession as I knew it, I was trying all sorts of things to help me be in the self-care realm, right? And mindfulness was one of those things. But yeah, I was running into the feeling of like, it seemed it didn't seem to always feel so nurturing. It felt sometimes pretty rigid. Like, yeah, like sit for 10 minutes in the morning, sit for 10 minutes in the evening, just, yeah, sit still. And I knew I didn't have to clear my mind, because I was aware that mindfulness is just really present moment awareness, and sort of acceptance of what is and allowing things to kind of move through my mind. But I actually really don't do a lot of formal seated meditation. And sometimes I've kind of come to a piece about I feel like I'm telling a secret. Like, I actually, I'm a creative mindfulness coach, but I don't really do formal seated meditation. Sometimes I do, but maybe it's in the context of a yoga class, and maybe, we're doing that at the beginning of the class and we're doing shavasana at the end of the class, or maybe I'm attending a sound bath, or something like that. But maybe I'm facilitating a sound bath, or maybe I'm singing to a patient in the hospital and I'm connecting with them in an attuned way. Or maybe I'm making a collage in the soul collage method, where I'm getting just real kind of quiet with myself and clear around what's coming up. And so there are so many different ways you can do anything mindfully. You don't have to be sitting down with sensory deprivation happening. You can chop vegetables mindfully, you can walk mindfully, you can also do anything mindlessly. And so the more that I sort of broaden my understanding about what mindfulness really is, the more I think I was really coming online to actually what was feeling aligned with who I should be in contact with, what I should be doing. And again, not shoulds based on what anybody else thought, but shoulds meaning like this is what I actually am desiring and feels, like
Yeah,
I think the
it sounds
highest
like you were able
vibration
to
of it.
acknowledge, yeah, to acknowledge what was in alignment for you, what felt good to
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right? You stated a beautiful definition of mindfulness. Will you restate that again?
I will try. So mindfulness is really intentional, present focused awareness that's non-judgmental in the way that you're paying attention. So if you find yourself judging yourself for thinking about something in the past or thinking about something in the future, you can acknowledge that and say, oh, judgment. And you acknowledge the judgment non-judgmentally. And so it's just about arriving in the now, knowing that you are existing right now. And when you catch yourself in a thought about the future or a thought about the past, you can acknowledge that that's happening. And then you can bring yourself back to what's happening right now. And that can be internally, and that can be also in your environment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to add, I was writing down exactly what you said. I'm going to put that in the show notes so everyone has access to that and we can form this, definition together on what it truly is, because there are so many different thoughts and different agreements that we make within ourselves or our culture around us of what mindfulness is. And I know a lot of times for my population that I serve, sometimes they see it as going against their religion or going against, certain things that they have learned. And that's not that. It's us. We get to experience heaven on earth, right? But when we let our mind create thought, because that's what mind is meant to do, right? It might take us further away from that heaven on earth space that we can truly create within us, right?
Yeah, it's
So
that awareness that, you like, I am the sky and I'm observing all the weather, right? There's this self that's observing what's going on. And when I can kind of go up and have that observer view, then I can realize I'm not my thoughts. I'm having a thought, right? So,
yeah.
it could have been right before this interview, like, oh, I'm a little nervous. Like, I'm having the thought, I'm nervous. Or even there is nervousness here,
Yes.
and so it's just that acknowledging of like what is coming up, and that's not all I am. That's just sort of what's crossing over the threshold right now, right?
Yes,
um,
yes. I love that. I will work with clients and that, so we call that an attachment, right? So if we say I am nervous, like I'm attaching to that, and there's really no room for change or flexibility or flow. So I'm experiencing nervousness, right? Energy is or emotions rather are energy in motion. So when I latch on, that gives me little room for transformation, little room for growth. But if I know that I'm just experiencing it and I acknowledge that part, right, that's online, then it's like, okay, it's here. I acknowledge it. I validate it. Now I can breathe through it to keep transforming and to stay in that present moment.
and it's really, I mean, it's really hard when you don't want whatever's there to be there. So a lot of people equate mindfulness with relaxation, and it can be quite confrontational because you're confronting whatever is there, and what might be there might be panic, fear, loneliness, all of those things. And those were the kinds of things I was confronting when I was like having panic attacks, realizing like this is I'm not happy right now. Like something's happening when I had the kind of awakening that I needed to make a shift.
Yeah.
That like, oh, that's my body giving me information. And can I be the observer that's sort of taking that in, and mindfully listening to those messages, and then in an informed way, in a mindful way, decide how I want to respond. And that's really difficult because just I think that mindfulness helps our distress tolerance skills. Not that if we're in a situation that's abusive or anything like that, we should learn how to tolerate it. Not that kind of distress, but we all have distress every single day. Right? I was just talking with my daughter last night about how she like really didn't want to go to French class, and like just wasn't. It was really hard for her lately, and so I'm trying to practice accepting that like she has to go to French class. How can I help in terms of just acceptance around that? How can my energy be an accepting, allowing energy to allow her to share her feelings and to model for her that like, yeah, let's just sit with the fact that that feels really distressing and hard. I hear that.
Yes, yes. I'm so grateful you circled back around to that, because I wanted to ask you, you said, your body was giving you signals, or it was giving you clues, just that like something was out of alignment for you. But how did you take that risk? I mean, for those listening, how do you take such a big risk?
I think for me, a big part of it was social support. And I knew that, I had the support of most importantly, my husband, who, he was like, we will figure it out. Like, we will cut corners if we need to. We'll do what we need to. Like, you being mentally and emotionally healthy and happy is the number one. And everything else can be figured out. And so, really being able to be in a supportive environment when you're considering making a big shift, for me, that was huge. And ultimately it was my decision and I had to, live with that. But I was doing that in the context of a very supportive environment. So I think that really gave me permission to keep listening to the voices and not just like putting band-aids on them, with different, coping skills that maybe like would have just been temporary
Yeah.
fixes. I really needed to go a bit deeper and ask the bigger questions, which again can be confrontational and scary. Like, does this fit what I want to do in this next chapter of my life anymore? Or does it need to look different? And what are the elements that I need to include so that I'm feeling more alive and more fulfilled, so that I can also be there for my family, and sort of lean into the gifts that I feel like I have been given. So I think that I've always been somebody who's done a lot of like self-analysis. So I think I already had those skills, but I think what I needed to do was be a lot more self-compassionate, and patient, and just step back and listen to myself for a bit, and take myself off of the foot off the gas, and have some stillness and some time to just consider, what's really important to me. And that can change, like, right, we're not the same people always that we were at 22 when I decided to go to grad school for this. So but like you said, I still have all the same skills and those definitely inform me. But I think the biggest ingredient to the risk taking was support. And the second ingredient was self-awareness. And the third was self-compassion.
Love it. That's what I was going to ask. How did you show up for yourself? But you just said it, right? Because that is so important in how we interact with our thoughts, how we show up for ourselves, how we receive ourselves. I mean, that's going to make or break that big risk that you go to take. And that resonates with me, Katy, because that I was a teacher prior to launching Breathwork 614. I was an educator for over a decade and a half. And I was one that held the health insurance and had, all the logistics in place. And so when I left, it was like, what? Then what? What's next? But it was all about that supportive community and the way I interacted with myself as I was going through that. And learning to trust yourself, right? Like that is a practice in itself, learning to trust yourself, especially when taking risks, when we think those are big risks in our life.
That's been a process for me. It still is.
Always. And it will be. That's why I just say it's all practice. Life is a practice. Well, you know what? When you say it's a practice, what does that allow you to do? Have a little more fun, a little more ease, right? Don't take everything so rigidly or personally even. So yes.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and that transition, right? Like that can be so supportive to those that are listening that might be on the verge of, something inside of me is telling me that this isn't for me anymore, or, I've changed, because we are ever evolving. This is life. We've got to give ourselves permission to flow with that change.
Absolutely. And I think it depends on how you make the change, when you make the change logistically. Again, everybody's situation is going to look different. So whether you can kind of just go cold turkey, like from one thing to the other, or if you sort of like start putting some things in motion, right? And as you're building up, maybe you're scaling down, or, it's going to depend. But I think the most important thing is, having that inner wisdom about like where you're going and not fooling yourself. And I think that I was fooling myself that I was happy enough. And that, I guilt myself a lot. Well, there are a lot of people in life that aren't happy at all, or that have really hard situations. And I should just be thankful that, that I have this degree and that I have this experience and I should use it to help people in this way. And that actually wasn't the most productive way to look at it. And actually it was sort of self-shaming.
Yeah, absolutely. The comparison, I mean, we all get caught up in comparing, right? I always say comparison is a thief of joy. But yeah, it's limiting our ability to play full out. And we're here to play full out. Like, that's what I love reminding my clients and just those in my community, that it is like well-being is your birthright. You get to have abundance, you get to have ease, you get to have joy, you get to play full out. And there might just be some tweaks that we need to make within our thought patterns and our belief systems and our behaviors, but you ultimately have the ability to receive that. So yes, thank you. So you've given us a beautiful definition of mindfulness. You kind of shared some of the modalities, but would you be willing to more explicitly share the creative mindfulness modalities that you interact with and what makes it creative versus other mindfulness modalities? Could you paint a clear picture for the listeners and viewers?
Sure. So I think that for me, creative mindfulness is really a global term for any type of mindfulness practices that aren't formal seated meditation. And when we say meditation, there's many types of meditation, but I think more for just in general purposes, it's the act of like, you're starting it here, you're stopping it here, and you're usually in the seated posture, and you're usually, using an anchor like your breath or, some sensory elements to ground you in the present moment. And so I think we can then expand the definition of mindfulness, like I talked about, and get creative with how we call whatever we're doing mindfully whatever, right? So again, like if I'm walking from point A to point B, I can do that while thinking about what's waiting for me at point B and what I was just doing at point A, and all sorts of things. Or I can walk from point A to point B walking. And when I'm walking, I'm just walking. And when I'm singing, I'm just singing. And when I'm cooking, I'm just cooking. And yeah, life sometimes doesn't happen just that way. Like I'm cooking and there are children talking to me and asking me questions, and they're, like whatever. And that's okay. That's life as a teacher, and my kids are my mindfulness teachers, because they help ground me in the present moment again. But the idea of creative mindfulness is just to expand the definition of mindfulness, so that you can get creative, use your innate creativity to, however your life circumstances are, integrate mindfulness into whatever you're doing. And so the types of offerings that I have a certain type of creative element to them. They are a little bit more like classically creative elements. So we're using like art-based experiences like soul collage, or sort of, I call it mindful vision boarding, or we're doing, we're using sensory things like when we're forest bathing or when we're at a sound bath. But you don't have to be creative, and it's not about getting more creative. But usually if you're doing something mindfully, it's allowing you to be more open and have this, what in Buddhism they call beginner's mind, and that can be really conducive for creativity. So the two, creativity and mindfulness, really play well together, and augment each other. But yeah, I guess it's a little bit about what creative mindfulness means to me. It's really just helping people understand that it's not just about this one. It's not a one-trick pony. It's whatever you want to make it, and it can be curated for your own lifestyle.
Yeah, it really broadens, right? It broadens the whole practice. And it takes a little bit of the edge off of, it's got to be like this, and I've got to meet myself like this in that moment, which ultimately helps you grow a relationship with yourself, right? A closer relationship with yourself. So I love that.
Yeah, and I think it just there's a lot of self-compassion in that because you're gentle with yourself. Like again, I'm a recovering perfectionist, so I didn't need any more rules. I didn't need any more like we do the practice like this and we place our hands here and we sit like this and we do this. I was like, ooh, and again, sometimes I do that, and that is a really good practice and it's helpful. And I know Darren Larson, who I was talking about before, like he's been meditating every day for like 20 years and swears by it. And that's one of his practices, but he's also an amazing pianist, and that's a mindfulness practice for him. And some of your listeners might vibe more with calling some of these things spiritual practices. Some of the things like I think of singing at the hospital as a spiritual practice too, as sort of this mindful offering that's therapeutic. And it's so attuned because I'm in that present moment with the people there. And I'm not thinking about, the email that I need to check later on. And I'm not thinking about, the thing that didn't go well this morning at home or something. I'm really, if I'm doing it well, I'm right there with people. And that's why also a part of creative mindfulness can be the relational element. So sometimes you can use meditation in a very solitary way, which is lovely. It can be introspective. But I think also coming from my background as a systemic therapist, there's mindful communication, right? And the way that we are interacting with each other is really important. Now, I am, a poster child for screwing that up in my daily life. And I think I have more awareness about it because I know as much as I do as an MFT, and I'm like, oh, I ruined that interaction. But at least the mindfulness comes, even if it comes after an interaction that didn't go well, you have the awareness about it and you can go back and repair.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. You're creating a whole new neural pathway, right? A new neural pathway. So that next time you are interacting with a moment like that, it's okay. I can show up in the way that, feels good to my heart, where I'm giving and receiving love, or I'm giving and receiving that connection. Yes. Yeah. So you spoke about, I just want to take it a little bit more home to followers. You spoke about different modalities that you're interacting with. So collage, you said you really love collage. But what else, if someone was just looking to get started, like where would they start? Maybe they're not comfortable attending a class, or, they're not even sure how to meet themselves in this type of space. What would you recommend? What would be just a very safe starting point for someone?
So there are actually a couple books that I might point them to that I think are great because they're more kind of like interactive type of books. I think the one that comes to mind, I have it right here on my bookshelf, so give me 1 second and I'll grab it. Because it's a really beautiful way to practice back here. Well, a couple things, but this is the one I was thinking of first. So John Kabat-Zinn, who is sort of can be thought of as like the father of modern like westernized mindfulness, who developed mindfulness based stress reduction, MBSR, and that was used at hospitals with people with chronic pain, and it's been replicated in studies over and over and over. And certainly somebody can go do like an MBSR class and really get kind of a really immersive experience in meditation and sort of in more of like a Buddhist informed way, but again, it's secular. But a colleague of mine, whose name is Janet Slom, she's an MFA, so Master's in Fine Arts, and she's an artist, she's a painter. She wrote a book called An Artful Path to Mindfulness. MBSR-based activities for using creativity to reduce stress and embrace the present moment. And this is a really beautiful workbook in which you're doing just really simple art-based activities that you could lead yourself through, but it's really all for the purpose of experiencing what mindfulness feels like and having some self-inquiry around like how that feels for you then. And just kind of, the foundations are exploring your creativity, inviting a deeper sense of peace and well-being, awaking your authentic and joyful self, infusing mindfulness practice with fun. So I really think that can be a good, like, on your own kind of first step into exploring mindfulness in maybe more of a non-traditional way.
Yeah.
And another book I really like, which is maybe not so directly called, a mindfulness book, but I love The Artist's Way, by Julia Cameron. And the subtitle is A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. But this is all about discovering and recovering your creative self. And this is all about tuning in, getting still, exploring, and opening yourself up to new experiences. Part of the practice in The Artist's Way is doing something called morning pages. So every morning you'd just free write for 3 pages about whatever. It's sort of just like a brain dump. And that's like whatever is happening in the present moment, you're writing that. Like if thoughts are happening, if feelings are happening, if a grocery list is happening inside of you, whatever, like you're just writing it down. And so it can be a really wonderful way to just get whatever is going on in your mind out. And it allows you to start seeing some patterns in the inner working of your mind. And then she has something she calls an artist date, where you take yourself to the theater or a museum or something where you're interacting with your own or somebody's creativity, and you're just, again, like experiencing that in an attuned, mindful way. So those are a couple of the books that have really inspired me, and that I feel really relate to kind of how I think about mindfulness. And I would love to at some point do like a book group, like work with The Artist's Way and stuff. So I can see that happening. But yeah, those are a couple good touchstones.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will add those once again to the show notes too. So followers have access to that.
Yeah.
Awesome. I knew you would have all the resources. Thank you. Thank you. And yes, those sound like very safe ways, right, to meet yourself in this vulnerable place that you've maybe not explored ever, if not for, a very long time. So to get back in touch with that creative side. How would you say, so a lot of times with clients and just within the Breathwork 614 community, we talk about conscious creating. We get to create our reality. And when we are aware of our thoughts, our behaviors, our breath, our emotions, so on and so forth, it's just happening. It's just happening. And it might be happening in a very incongruent way that doesn't support us, in our reality. So how has either creative mindfulness or mindfulness played a role in helping you to create the reality you desire and to really receive your well-being?
Yeah, I think that brings me up to saying another kind of like tool or a starting place for people, because it's been a really important element for me, has been using the idea of a vision board, but in not the way that sometimes people think of vision boards. So sometimes they can get a bad rap because, I don't know. For me, I'm not interested necessarily in making a vision board because I want like to manifest granite countertops, right? So I'm putting them on my board and like, I will get them because it's on my board and I'm going to make it happen. And I don't know, maybe that can happen. But for me, I talk about using vision boards mindfully, in the sense of I am noticing when I am just looking through magazines, what words or images or phrases or colors or whatever is speaking to myself in some way. Like sometimes you'll pass by things and they won't really resonate with you, and sometimes they will. So for anything that just feels like, ooh, yeah, the word daring, or a picture of a skydiver or whatever, like you don't have to know why that's happening in the moment, like why you're choosing that, but just tear it out, cut it out, and then take the time to then have a blank canvas and mindfully put the things on there that feel like, yeah, that is really resonating to like daring. I do feel like that is a quality I want to embody in my current life, and I want to live into that. Like I want my future self to be a daring, adventurous person, right? So I'm putting this skydiver in this word daring up there. It's really, again, just like this experiential process, and then like a tangible reminder of intentional living.
Yeah. Yeah. It promotes, well, it sparks that embodiment, that feeling, right? When you see that picture, and it's promoting energy over strategy. So we say that a lot, right? Like let the energy do the work for you. Let the universe, let God, let higher power, let that do the work for you. And when we are pushing and pulling and being rigid, such as you said, earlier as we started our episode today, like that's out of alignment. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good within us. But if I see this image and it sparks this expansive state, such as I am flying, I'm soaring. Oh my gosh, there we go. There it is. Guess what?
And from that, I can create the strategy. So then I can set some SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time bound, whatever the acronym stands for. I sometimes remember it all. But we can get specific then and goal driven related to those. But if we don't have the foundational qualities and values and elements that we're setting the table with initially, then the other things that are going on top of that, like they're not going to be aligned, and the goals that we set won't feel good, and they'll feel like shoulds. They won't feel like wants and highly resonant aligned action.
Yeah. So to go back, and I had to ask, how has mindfulness or creative mindfulness helped you to consciously create your reality? I hear there's more alignment now.
Yeah. I mean, the things that I put on my vision board, I like keep going like this because it's like on my wall. You can't see it now, but when I look at that, I'm like, yeah, that feels really good. I'm living into some of those things. I have someone on there doing yoga. Like I have something that says travel, something that says family time. I have a bike on there. I have just all these things that when I first put them on there, I didn't necessarily know exactly what they were going to look like or what they would mean, but I knew that that is a vibe. And I feel like my current behaviors and actions and how I spend my days is in alignment with that vision of intentional living. And so I think how consciously creating, I think for me, it's if I'm noticing that my body is starting to do the things that it used to do, like panic attacks or, migraines, or just this sort of restrictive, tense feeling all over, that is my biggest cue to me to go, okay, wait a second. Am I getting too hustly in my business right now? Am I getting too scarcity mindset focused or something? Am I feeling like I'm saying yes to things that actually don't really want to say yes to? Am I saying no to things that actually are the things that I'd really rather be doing? So I think that somatic check-in has allowed me to take the pause and decide, what do I want to create space for, time for, experiences of, and what do I want to, create less of in my life.
There it is, that somatic pause. Yeah, because you said you're receiving alignment, you're receiving connection. You can hear just in everything that you've shared in this episode today, the different various connections you have within relationship to others. Healthy boundaries, I just heard you say, right? You're receiving healthy boundaries. Abundance, it's the opposite of scarcity. And ease, right? If you're not in that hustle mindset, you're being mindful about not hustling. There it is, ease. All of those, right? All of those are the river of well-being flowing to you. Thank you, Katy. Thank you. Absolutely. What would you say if you had to sum up for listeners your biggest takeaway from your own personal development journey, from your creative mindfulness journey? What would you say to really connect the dot to followers' well-being?
I think that it's incredibly important to not be in denial about what's really happening, to be awake to what's actually going on in the moment, to really be mindful. I mean, that's and if that means I need to feel some feelings, if that means I need to make some changes, if that means I need to repair some relationships, if that means I need to change some behaviors, I think that confronting that has been the greatest challenge and opportunity and and life-giving change that I've had is just being honest with myself, because I don't want to look back and have thought I was a really good girl. I did a lot of things that I should have done. Like, I want to look back and be like, wow, like I really did the things that were closest to my heart. And I think we always have to do stuff that's hard. But we also, have reward in that too. So I think that there are moments that I have when I'm like, well, I don't really want to be parenting right now. I don't really want to navigate this difficult conversation with my husband. But I have learned to take the step back and zoom out and try to have that sky mind to be like, okay, these relationships are important to me. In general, my values are love and kindness, and caring. And so how can I bring those values? How can I intentionally bring those values into every interaction that I have? And so I think that, yeah, those are all the things that mindful living has taught me. And it's never too late. And 1 minute of mindfulness is better than none. And anyone can do it.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that I would say is that you don't have to be alone in it. And because it can be confrontational, it's really important to have a supportive community. So whether that's a therapist, a coach, family, all of those things I think are really important, to be able to enable you to move beyond, just surviving and really be thriving. So I wish that for everybody, because it's really awesome when life can feel like you're living it the way that you want to live it.
Yeah, like it supports you, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's true. You are just resonant, like emitting and resonating with we live in an infinite universe, right? We live in an infinite universe. I truly believe our universe is always saying yes to us. So if it's saying yes to how you're currently living, imagine what it's going to say when you start transforming a few things for your good, right? When you start positioning yourself opening to receive well-being, then it's a real yes. Like it's like true, right? Heart palpitating yes.
Yes.
This is why I'm living. This is what I'm passionate for.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
I am.
you.
Just a quick story though about like how your brain can really talk you out of things that your heart really feels, right? I at first didn't accept. I interviewed for the job at Ohio Health that I'm doing part-time now as the artist in residence where I'm singing and playing my bowls for patients. And I initially said no to it because I'm like, well, it's kind of a far drive, and is it going to pay what I want it to pay? And I was just I was doing all well, it's not maybe the most practical or best choice or whatever, like with my thoughts, I was handling all that decision making. And then I noticed after I said no thank you that my body then started to do all those things, and it was like, what are you doing? Why would you? This is like the universe literally offered you the thing that you're like, it would be really nice if I would be able to like use my music therapeutically and not have to be a therapist, not have to go back to school to do music therapy, but just have I don't know, a position where I could just do that.
Yeah.
Like, this is that opportunity. So I called back and I was like, yeah, I would actually really like to do this. And again, like everything can be figured out. And maybe that means that then I also have to do these other things to make this thing happen and whatever.
Yeah.
Everybody's situation is different. But that was just an illustration of how even somebody who's been a therapist for 20 years is a creative mindfulness coach and all this stuff, like should sort of like knows that it's important to lead with your heart and trust yourself and make values aligned decisions. It can still be really hard to do because the mind gets in self-preservation mode, and it's just trying to help you survive, and it goes into old patterns. And sometimes, again, you can't do the change in the moment, but you can reflect on it and you can try to repair. And
Yeah.
some people, they hadn't moved on to somebody else who's still able to do that.
Well,
So
high five for doubting your self-doubts, right? Like, way to go. Doubt those self-doubts. Your body will never lie. I tell people, your mind will lie. It will lie. It wants to keep you safe. That is its job, right? But your body will not. There's so much consciousness within our body. And that's what breath work's about, right? When we can get into our body, we can reframe those belief systems. Oh, then you're good. You're golden. You can soar. You truly can. Katy, thank you so much for being on today. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for enlightening us on how we can take risks with ourselves, how we can meet ourselves in a loving and self-compassionate way, and introducing us to a whole new modality, creative mindfulness. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure my viewers and listeners will appreciate it too. Before we close though, we do have some events coming up, so we got to be sure to share. So if you are local, close to the 614, Katy and I are hosting a breathwork and sound bath event coming up on December 9th from 9:30 to 11, and that's at the Bee Sanctuary. And that's Katy is a co-founder of the Bee Sanctuary. This is in Upper Arlington. But join us for a transformative breathwork and sound bath event. It's designed to rejuvenate your mind, body, and your soul. We're going to harness the power of breath and to release stress and find emotional clarity and ignite profound sense of well-being and a deeper connection with yourself. It will be a relaxing, restorative crystal singing bowl hosted by Katy. I'm the breath worker. Katy's the sound bather, if you're catching up to speed here. But we know that you're going to enjoy this unique self-care experience. And then if you aren't local, but you're looking to join the Breathwork 614 community virtually, on January 21st, I am launching the Breathe Well, Be Well 6-week transformational program. So this is a program that I launch twice a year. So the first one was last June, and now we're coming back to January here. Lots of good testimonials, and it will be held every Sunday from 2 to 4. That's Eastern Standard Time. There will be live sessions, and then a Zoom recording will land in your inbox for flexibility and review. But build awareness of your breath, your emotions, and your thoughts to transform your life. Every session will include a breathwork session. So that's 1 hour of coaching and then 1 hour of breathwork. So I can't wait to connect with you followers on a more intimate level. I'm always here. I will give Katy's information. Katy, do you want to go ahead and share your information right now? Just if someone had further questions, how they could contact you and get a hold of you.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, my website is Katy Oberle Creative. That's KatyOberle creative.com. And you can email me at katy@katyoberlecreative.com. My handle on Instagram is Katy Oberle. And yeah, so I have an email community where I send out a monthly newsletter called Attunement, where I focus on a creative mindfulness theme. I suggest a practice related to that, and I share a tune that a song that may be one of mine or maybe somebody else's that relates to that theme. So it's just a beautiful way to have a bit of kind of curated mindfulness content coming straight to your inbox. And then in those newsletters too, I share upcoming events that are happening virtually and in person. So I shared the one that Tiffany and I are doing together, but I'd love for you to join. If you go to my website, there's a little pop-up that happens. And when you sign up, you'll get a free guide to 5 ways to practice mindfulness without meditating.
Yay, yes. Oh, and I will be posting all these goodies in the show notes for you so you have access to it all. So thank you for showing up for yourself today. Thank you for breathing love to yourself, because when we breathe love to ourselves, we can breathe love to others. Bye.